So I'm just gonna get started with the pyro one here, just the ground explosion, and go through some of the stuff with it. While this is loading, I also wanted to give a shout out or thanks to, let me see who it was here. Grumcow in the Discord. So Grumcow is nice enough to go through my PureVex scene file from Sunday. Did a really good job of, I think I can do it. Let me see if this works. Broke down the whole video. It was like a 2 hour, hour and a half long lesson or lecture. It's on YouTube if you want to find the video itself. But he took the time to break down kind of each building block or each step of the process into these individual step wrangles, with each one is like comments on the new step or the new techniques that are being like discussed or talked about. So I think this is a really cool way to kind of digest new information as well, to just introduce like each step in a kind of little piece by piece fashion, instead of sometimes if you're getting the final like end result hip files from someone, you don't realize all the time or like which step came in what order or anything like that. So yeah, this is a good way to follow along with the stream and breaking it down. I think he was saying they were saying they did timestamps I believe as well, for like when things sync up with the video. And then in this link here, I also keep doing that, I'm sorry. I also included, made some improvements to the file before I posted it with this video.
So right at the same time,
So if you get the Houdini file here, let's see if I can get it. Just grab it this way. There's some extra equations and stuff like that that I included in the file when I cleaned it up. So I included this, I made this as a GIF on Twitter or whatever, but as well, if you're going through it, there's a nice little library of all the graphing functions and stuff like that. So there's these wrangles that all have the same comments and code that appears on the left in the viewport, but just to visualize everything and explain it as well, this is a pretty useful thing to go back and check out too. If you don't watch the whole video or don't have time to follow along, just going through these equations, or if you keep kind of going back to it and trying to learn and chip away a little bit with the Vex and wrangles and stuff like that, that's a good way to learn it. It's too intimidating to do it all at once. But yeah, our end result from Sunday, we got a pretty cool bouncing ball thing. So I'm going to keep doing these kind of workshops or longer sessions, more technical Vex sessions every Sunday, doing them at 1 p.m. regular time, just a weekly thing, and keep kind of building from here. This ended up with I don't know, it's a little bit, maybe not for the complete introductory person getting into Vex, but this is definitely kind of the starting, it's like a starting building block, but it's, I think I moved a little bit too quickly for just the complete beginner, but someone who's getting started and interested in Vex, I think it's definitely worth checking out. So the graph is included with the file. If you just go up here, it's just different different functions. Like if you ever used a graphing calculator or whatever, it's like the y equals x function. So the linear increase, or the first one, is like a y equals x equation. I think maybe I have to go to 0. So this is just like y equals x, or in this case, time is my x axis. And then I was just showing other equations or shaping functions. In this case, I was doing like a kind of physics or particle simulation, particle animation. So I'm using these for like easing and friction, decay and stuff like that. So over time, gravity has this effect on things so they don't bounce as high. So if you picture like a sine wave and then multiply that decay to the sine wave, you get this like bouncing thing like that. Haven't done your homework? Yeah, I mean it's not as rigid as that regime of a assignment kind of regime or whatever, but definitely worthwhile information for Houdini, or even if you're using other 3D software. This is like the underlying kind of math that gets used for all animation across the board. All right. So enough about that. So yeah, wanted to get into these shelf tools today a little bit. I just started with a simple ground explosion. I'm just going to go through some of the new things that they added. Just pick this apart instead of like running around and jumping into 20 different things, because it's like can be a bit overwhelming. The new releases. I'm really interested in Pyro, so I'm just going to be going through that for today or for right now. Go back into the what's new, Pyro and Flip. This is a good breakdown of all the new Pyro stuff, and then these new Pyro shelf tools as well. So you can find that right here. So they have this new node. It's the attribute adjust float. I'm a pretty big fan of all of these. They have a few different nodes that are all kind of in the same mindset or idea as this. So they have this adjust float, they have the randomize, they have the attribute noise, and they have attribute remap. So these are all really cool ways of just working with data, working with attributes. These two you can use to generate randomly or through a noise or kind of like a synthesizer. And then remap and adjust float are cool to set up like shape values. So if you go inside of these, you kind of see this one's actually built with the attribute noise inside of it, and has a few different wrangles that it's built on, but wrapping those up so people aren't just constantly like rebuilding those it's a really cool thing to see that. And I think, at least for randomize and noise, like the new documentation or the new help files for these nodes, they've been doing a better job. Yes, they've been doing a really cool job actually like visually kind of explaining what's going on with it. Whereas before it would just be like paragraphs of text, and it would be a little, at least for me, it wouldn't be as easy to visualize it or learn from it. But yeah, I think they've been doing a better job. The attribute randomized one, for sure, this one has a really great help file with it as well. Yeah, certain documentation pages will make you more confused, I think. This one, again, they have really cool visual examples. Like if every node had these really nice graphs and charts and stuff like that, it would make it a lot easier to learn this stuff. So I think even things like this is kind of like what sometimes I've used this attribute randomized node before to generate like unique variants. This is kind of like seeing your outcome, like distribution, just some simple pictures kind of showing that stuff goes a long way. Kira, how's it going? So they're building some trails for the pyro explosions. They never used to do this. They never used to add these like mortar lines or projectiles or whatever you want to call them. So I think it adds a lot like artistically for the end result. I think we can go back here. So this is just the ground explosion one that I've opened. You could see I'm sorry, this is the wrong one. This is the aerial explosion, and then this is the ground one that I have here. So you can see those trails. Just compositionally, I think it adds a little bit more interest seeing those spikes or the lines or whatever at the start. I think you can't really tell that much from the end result simulation, but even these spikes right here make a big difference. Waiting for your 3080 delivery. Yeah, I don't know if the documentation is a little hit or miss. Like certain nodes, I think they split up maybe the tasks and distribute it to different teams or something like that. So certain nodes will get really great documentation, and then some maybe more technical nodes or things they don't expect to get used as much will have a bit just like undocumented or just isn't as polished. So yeah, this is a pretty cool one. This is a node just intended to generate like pyro trails, so it's pretty cool. They have all these technical azimuth angle, like that has to do with like horizon, like mapping hemisphere kind of coordinates. So this is just a complete procedural way of generating these pyro trails without a simulation. So again, it's something that's, I think if you look inside of here, some of the math, is it without any? I think it's without any simulation. But some of the math, I think you would find this is a bit complex, but it would be ballistic path like this should be pretty similar. I think they've internally complicated it quite high. But you could imagine like the Vex stuff I was going over last Sunday is similar to this in terms of creating these projectile paths, starting with the sine wave. I'm sure they have some similar math functions or equations or whatever in here somewhere. It's cool to wrap it up as a tool so you don't always have to get lost in the math, or all the artists you're working with, they don't all have to be on the same page in terms of technical mathematics mindset or whatever. Like you could distribute this to a team of people and you're all kind of using the same common language that's a bit simplified, and then the developer or the lead artist would be the one like deep in the equation, kind of tweaking the values or whatever. So yeah, this ground explosion, this is using, we go to the solving advanced, it's just using the sparse solver right now. So it's CPU based. It's not using GPU at all for the way that the tools set it up. We could turn it on in a little bit, some of those. And then this is a new node as well, the Pyro Bake Volume. So I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was talking with some of the Axiom stuff. This Pyro look is pretty similar to that Axiom stuff I was going into for a little bit. It includes a shader, but inside of it, they're doing some similar fancy stuff with VDB operations to blur the volume internally to make a scattering volume. It might be, so I don't think it's similar to the Pyro post process, but the scatter is a completely new thing, I believe. So if you look at the Pyro post process, this one is kind of like doing some, why the CPU though? So we could go to OpenCL in a little bit, but in terms of the sparse solver, that's all still only supported with the CPU. It doesn't run on the GPU yet, or hopefully one day it will, but for the time being, it doesn't work with the GPU. So it's the sparse solver. I don't know if there's a super good way to visualize it. It's essentially your Pyro domain. Let me see if this works. Might need to switch it to, the domain is non-rectangular. So it's a bit more efficient because you're simulating less voxels because it's an adaptive domain. That's what they mean with the sparse solver. I think sparsity here, enable sparse solving is turned on. So you might be able to visualize it. Maybe if you do volume mix, just add a value of 1. Density. I'm trying to do is just overwrite the, get out of here. Okay. So these are the actual like chunks of the simulation that get activated over time. So it's a little bit more efficient. It's kind of like resizing container or something like that. But that's the reason why it's set up with CPU. So just going back to this Pyro look, or the Pyro bake volume, the Pyro post process was doing a few things in one. It was basically, everything was built with this, what was it? Just the visualize volume. This is pretty much the only way to like shade your volume in the viewport. If you go inside of here, you'll see it somewhere at the bottom. And then the other stuff that they were doing, do you see yourself as a coder? Are you good in math? I've never been that good in math in terms of like the textbook definitions, or the actually like equations that get pretty complicated with Greek letters and stuff like that. But just doing computer graphics, as long as I have like 10 years or something, I've gotten pretty proficient with code in terms of like understanding it. Like if I see a math equation written as VEX code, I can usually visualize it or decipher it pretty quickly. But if it's written in like textbook form, like an Algebra 2 textbook or something, I wouldn't really know what was going on with it. So the bake volume is including some of the Pyro post-process steps, but it also has this scatter volume feature built in as well. So the scattering volume is kind of baking the internal illumination or internal volume scattering of things. If we turn it off, you turn on just the fire. This is the traditional way that they would, you would get a color or like an emissive volume from your fire, your explosion. Basically the temperature field or the heat field get mapped to a temperature ramp. This scatter volume is an extra step that's blurring the VDB or the intensity, the heat or the temperature under the hood to make it, to simulate like that's kind of spreading out or echoing through the smoke. If you look at the V-Ray volume grid, it's a bit similar to that in terms of getting some of like the indirect illumination. So like this broad kind of glow and stuff like that. Shading just became more easy. Yeah, it should be a bit easier. And then even with, if you were to render it with Redshift, getting these broader, softer glows that was always like a bit harder to achieve. That's what this Pyro Bake node will do. So it's super nice for that stuff. So what their default settings is they're basically turning everything off except this secondary glow, the secondary stuff, which is really cool to have that. So this, you can control the radius iterations, is all of this under the hood is just doing the VDB smooth down samples. So they're doing a half res volume to speed up the blurring and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty useful, pretty cool to have that. I don't know about some of the default settings. I think it's a bit kind of clamped in that sense. Like it's super broad and spread out. So I would go in and maybe reduce the radius and some other stuff. I think that might make it look a little bit better. Vox Mega, how's it going? And then they're merging in the trails here, these like hot tips. So if you want to just visualize the smoke, you can see it without those like little hot kind of emitters or whatever that get passed along with it. If you want to as well, you could just turn off the trails completely by doing that kind of stuff. It's kind of up to you. With the results that they were getting, I would think it's maybe better not to simulate with those trails in. Just because they don't have a ton of influence on the base simulation, like they're not ripping or pulling stuff off too much. And then it does expand, or it's just more area and more of the domain to simulate. So yeah, it's pretty cool just with the default settings. And then if you want to get things using the OpenCL, you can do that, or the minimal OpenCL is the new, like, they were calling it the GPU preview solver in some of the product videos, or the keynote, or whatever you want to call it. So what that does is, by default, it kind of optimizes your settings to get previewed and played back more quickly. For example, the cache simulation internally automatically is like turned off or disabled. So that was something when I was setting up like my solvers, I would always turn that off when I was running stuff on the GPU. This is a bit quicker or better for doing that, because it will take care of a lot of settings at once with just that one, with the one button click. And then the other thing you see is that it runs out of space really quickly. So that's the reason I was saying 5 or 10 minutes ago with the sparse solver, it will automatically enable sparse solving and expand or activate new space as the simulation progresses. With GPU solving, you basically just specify the box or the container that you think your simulation is going to take up. And so if you start here, maybe like 44, 20, maybe we'll move it up 5 units. You can see it's running a little bit quicker. We're still running out of space. But that's the difference, is that it's not constantly kind of resizing itself. With GPU solvers, it doesn't want to like exchange or change data that quickly. It just wants to get the information it needs and then keep like repeating the same operations. Trash Panda, thank you for the Twitch Prime. Let's go. Trashy Panda, how you doing? So I'm gonna make the height for this a little bit taller. I think sometimes if you want to visualize the domain, I'll just use this volume bound node sometimes. And then that will give you like a wireframe box that encapsulates everything. I don't know if this looks like I was having trouble getting it exactly on the origin. I might have to go even bigger with the edges of this. The default voxel size you can see is a little bit chunky, or a little bit low res. You also want to press the D key of the viewport and make sure your limit resolution is disabled, so you're getting like the unfiltered high res visualization of the Pyro. And then I think if you really want the full like high speed performance, if you don't do the Pyro look, you'll get a little bit quicker results. because this is doing the scattering, blurring, all those operations are done using the CPU. So if you just want the quickest, most interactive results, just doing things this way, you can see I'm getting closer to real time. Like I said, it's not as good as EmberGen in terms of performance or results, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, and it's getting a lot closer. I'm just gonna go, I think in the look, everything's a little too intense. I also reduced the voxel size from 0.4 to 0.25. It's a bit higher resolution. You can see just out of the box, their settings are getting a little bit better. Usually I'll turn off. Can't get a resizable bounding box to get performance in this setup then. So with GPU simulations, just save this file if you guys want to play around with it while I'm going. With GPU simulations, I don't think you get a ton of optimizations with resizable bounding box. You basically will either be able to run the simulation on your GPU, or you don't have enough VRAM to run the simulation. But doing a smaller or bigger domain doesn't necessarily help in that sense. All right, this is the 21st. I think I didn't. I don't know. I don't remember if I included my. Forget if I included my own shelves in this. There's this one that was like for you guys to grab. I'm just gonna copy it, I think, real quickly. All right, I think we're good. I don't know if I can reload. Was there a button to reload shelf tools? I might just have to do a new Houdini. I don't know why this OpenCL exception comes up. I think it's not like a hard fail. All right, should be good now. Alright, I'm gonna have to look into that, but we'll just have to fix that. We'll just keep going right now with the GPU stuff. So just make sure with your texture, it's limit resolution is turned off. if you want the full preview size. Let me just take a look here. Some of the other things I was setting, I think if you go to advection, you usually do the BFE-CC advection, RK3 or Runekata 3 trace method. Again, that's something with GPU simulations. You don't get a really noticeable speed hit. These are higher quality, kind of more accurate or a higher order advection processes. With a GPU, it will run quick enough that it's kind of a negligible difference in terms of performance. All right. We go over to the shape. Usually I don't use shredding. Turn that off. And I think this disturbance stuff is usually a bit too high by default. It's just giving, the disturbance is what gives you like the blocky, chunky, high frequency noise. But by default, it just, if it overtakes everything, it just looks like too uniform. And then the block size, as you reduce your voxel size, you will want to reduce that block size of the disturbance. That's basically the swirl size with turbulence. Block size is the frequency of the detail that will get added, like the little chunks. What they call is the block size, like voxel size essentially is the detail. I might have gone too low when I was turning down the disturbance. Just gonna go back up to maybe like 45. The turbulence, sometimes I'll turn that higher as well. Maybe the swirl size is a bit too big. Just go down to 2 with it. And let's go down in voxel size again. We'll just do a flip book and see what happens with it. So I should probably add a light to things to get this smoke just looks flat without any light. Just doing like the headlight to show the shape of it. And then usually if you see too many of these lines or the kind of like voxel artifacts, you'll usually like notice it, or it's because your simulation is, you're actually seeing the resolution or the voxels. But it usually happens if your contrast is too high. Like in this case, my intensity of the flames or of this emissive element is like super bright, or super crunchy. So the more you increase contrast overall, the more that you'll see that those artifacts or whatever. I think I figured out my shelf tool woes as well, so I should be able to pump a version of this file, this scene out to you guys in a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely a pretty good speed up in terms of just like 2 minutes. We're already getting 2 seconds of simulation with this Pyro Shelf tool. So it's pretty quick results, pretty easy to tweak. It's definitely getting closer to EmberGen quality and speed. And then the main reason or the main advantage to sticking with Houdini over EmberGen, at least for right now, is that Houdini adding in like using animated particle sources or animated characters for collisions or stuff like that. With EmberGen, you have to create all of that stuff inside of their application or their software. So it becomes a little inhibiting, even the camera. If you're using it for a visual effects shot for like a commercial or something like that, it's a little inhibiting to have to create and animate your camera all inside of EmberGen. And then like, if another artist is animating a car, doing like a collision against the wall or something like that, it's a bit limiting to have to do all of that stuff and not be able to import like an animated Alembic inside of EmberGen. Ronin Zen, what do you like best about 18.5 so far? I think that these new Pyro stuff, personally, I'm pretty excited for in terms of the baking. I don't have it visualized right now, but I was talking about it like 10 minutes ago, the scatter volume. It's a really important addition in terms of rendering explosions that look pretty good. I'm just gonna turn this, just press escape for right now. I don't know if side effects would acquire EmberGen at some point. Is kind of a different, different philosophy in terms of user interface and stuff that I don't think they get that close to. Salor Hassan, thank you for the 2 months. The Bezos bucks, let's go. So this is the bake volume here. I think I can do, let me save the file again. I think I just need to reload this one more time. More broadly, I'm super excited for the KinEffects tools. I think for like the average person being able to do rigs this easily, it's a pretty big, Bezos bucks. It's a pretty big advantage that side effects or the Houdini was always lacking. Having rigs historically done at the object level was just more tedious for people to work with like complex rigs at the shelf or at the object level. All right, so I saved the file, reopened it again. I should have my stuff working now. Aha. All right, so if you're using the shelves, where did it go? All right, using the shelves now, either list all. You should see this test file I just did. It was a bit of a erroneous share, but I'll send you guys the explosion file in a second. All right. So yeah, if you want to get up to date with me, there's the current scene that I'm working with. So yeah, with the Pyro stuff, let me just go maybe to 36 frames in. Should be somewhere around here. I'm just gonna dial in some of these baking scattering settings. So you can see already the difference. This Pyro solver internally is using something like the Pyro post process built in, but this Pyro look by default is just doing the scattering. So if I turn that off, there's no emissive volumes. just gonna go in with a point light. This is what I was saying, just will let you see the shape of the smoke a lot more, and it won't be like flatly lit. Reduce the density of things. So like I was saying, the more contrast you have, or the crunchier your smoke or density is, that's the more quickly you'll see the corners of the voxels or the artifacts, the grid artifacts. So if you turn on the just fire, enable fire, wish the minimal solver would be available in DOPS too. I think it kind of is. If you look, like, it's just more up to you to rebuild and manage more of the stuff. You could dig through it, and you should be able to get pretty close in terms of speed and performance with it. So, just turning on the fire, and then this is closer to these settings here. I'm just gonna, usually I'll start my ramps above 0. And then I think the higher range, if you go up like above 1, it's kind of more of like high dynamic range. You'll get a little bit more impressive results, I think. Like, you don't want everything to be glowing or look like it's on fire. You want just like the very brightest or the hottest areas to be kind of clipping out or getting to the yellow area. Something like that. How's it going, Dimitri? This is 18.5. Yeah, I'm playing around with right now the new Pyro look. So this Pyro bake volume is a new node in Houdini, and then we're in Houdini 18.5. So the best part about it is this scattering volume. So this will give you the blurry kind of GI look to things. So you can see without it, everything looks a bit CG. It's like you would never usually have this really bright, emissive part of an explosion next to some density over here that's like completely black or ignoring it. So the scattering is doing kind of pre-caching that step of the indirect GI or indirect scattering of the volume. So I just turned it down pretty high, like it was at 200 or something like that. So I think you just want it to be a little bit more subtle of an effect. And again, something that isn't like flattening out the smoke or the end result, the end effect overall. Looking at the Intagmatuts, yeah, they did a good massive drop of some of the new features. But some of it was a rehash of like some stuff they released midway through 18, like the path deform and all that stuff. But yeah, it's, with all the Houdini releases, even from 18 to 18.5, it's like so many new features to keep everyone busy for weeks. It's impressive. So it used to be like a 3ds Max user growing up, and like their service packs or even their main like year or main version number releases, like that wasn't a ton of new stuff to try out with it usually. I think Side Effects is really doing a good job, like pushing, just keeping everything up to date and cutting edge. I'm just going a bit higher with the main fire intensity to have this stuff generally just like hitting the white point or clipping out a little bit. And then sometimes I'll go in to the lower kind of end of the ramp, try to get a little bit more like red or saturation in that area. Think it's going to be sooner? It might be. I don't know. It seems like they've been drifting around with the release cycle. I remember like 3 or 4 years ago, I think with like Houdini 14, maybe it was 13. They were on it was around Halloween time that they were releasing it. But yeah, I don't think they necessarily will stick with like a 6-month release cycle. I think it depends a lot on just like when things are getting finished for them or feeling ready to be released. I don't know what happened here. I lost like some of the maybe I need this top of this ramp to get a little bit less saturated. It might have been just these numbers got shifted too high. I don't know. Was it? I think it was always set to this ramp. I don't know how I got it messed up so quickly. EV style real-time viewport. Yeah, to me that would be one of the bigger features, or just having them first party have a renderer that's like more comparable to Redshift, like a really reliable GPU renderer that comes with it. The Disney point material method, some of it seems pretty close to the vellum and grain stuff they already have, but there's definitely room to be improved on and pushed with all their solvers. Yeah, so I think my scatter is looking pretty good right now. It's just this fire. I'm having some trouble tweaking it. Let's see what they're using for it. It's just the temperature. So yeah, I think that's looking a little bit better. This scatter, I might blast it a little bit higher. It does a really good job of just softening things up and getting it kind of working with the smoke a bit better. Yeah, so I think that's looking better. I'm just gonna go back to the first frame. With this minimal OpenCL solve, you do automatically, it disables the cache because that's just how it's intended to be used. You just have to be a bit careful as you're dialing in settings. Like if you do go back to the first frame, you're gonna have to resimulate. But in this case, I wanted to do another simulation, so that's why I went back to the first frame. I'm just gonna go a bit slimmer in the width, and then I'm gonna go a little higher with the height. Could maybe go down in voxel size a little bit more, and let's do another flipbook. But yeah, I think for sure in upcoming versions, the biggest thing for like more widely adopted people using Houdini would be a EV style viewport. Like if you had that and they really nailed it, you could really sell people on using Houdini for more motion graphics, like quick commercial work, like eating into that After Effects Cinema 4D crowd. Just something that will be a lot more responsive is what they care about, because it's like such fast-paced workflows that they have. You can't really wait a night for renders to turn around. You just have to do stuff within like 30 minutes or something like that. So let's see how much I kind of messed it up here, but I don't know, I think it's a little bit better so far, just having more of a hot core and less of like a uniformly, I don't know, I'm never really a big fan of like the uniform kind of flat looks like that. I might end up increasing like the cooling rate so that this is another thing that will play into the final look. But yeah, the faster your temperature cools, then the more you'll just get like a hot flash. It will also reduce the overall height, that the buoyancy, the thermal buoyancy will move things upwards. And there's also dissipation. So the dissipation is just kind of like cooling rate, but it only applies to smoke. I think the other thing that EmberGen does really nicely is it generates all the extra passes for you on the fly. So for game engines, they'll usually write out like a lighting pass or like a normal pass, so that in the game engine or in real time they can relight, like specify the lighting direction on the fly. That's always something with Houdini. It turns into like a few days, or you need to hunt down some HDAs or use I think labs might have pretty good workflows for that stuff now. But yeah, I think just in the last 2 years, SideFX has come a long way with the Pyro tools, the shelf tools, and just the kind of templates and stuff like that, working a lot better on the fly. So you go back to the content library, and this tool that I'm using right now there, Ground Explosion, I think this is like an actual lit final render. It's not a viewport, so it looks a little bit better. Where did the video go? This guy was saying that the downloaded file comes wired up with a top net that by default gives you like 63, however many CPUs you have. Will make an explosion for each CPU, the way that the top network is wired up in their default file. Yeah, I don't know. I thought maybe it's just the documentation has the best video reference to look at. They also have the Fabric samples included in this content library, so that's another cool thing to grab and play around with. The other ones have videos. Yeah, it might be. I think they're still rolling out the website updates and changes. It might be just a glitch or something like that. If you go to the What's New and then Pyro, I think I don't know if they're the same videos, but there's videos here as well. So this is this shelf tool, the one that I pulled in that I'm working with right now. Um, like I was saying earlier, I disabled these spikes for the simulation. The main reason being is that they don't contribute a lot of influence, or they don't change the behavior of the simulation that much. So if you want to, I would just do them as a separate simulation to optimize like speeds and performance of voxel size and things like that. And then I'm just making some changes with the disturbance and turbulence and stuff like that, and the output look of things to try to get a little bit more like high intensity whiteness in areas of the simulation and get it looking less flat. But this look is pretty nice already. It's definitely gotten a lot better. So the main thing is just that scattering volume, as you could see it. Further in is like all these kind of soft areas. It was always a big problem, or really difficult to get those soft kind of glows or whatever in your simulations. It might be a little too low for me now. So yeah, I'm just gonna escape out of this for right now. I'm gonna go up in voxel size to adjust some things. I'm gonna go into my simulation tab and reduce the cooling rate. Like I was saying earlier, this will make sure it doesn't rise as high, and then it will also fade out just the intensity or the emissive areas of the volume more quickly. Under shape, if you want to, you could increase the dissipation just so that the smoke kind of fades away or disappears more quickly. And then in this look, I'm gonna expand the bottom end of my scatter volume range just to try to get it spreading out a little bit more. I might have also gone too low with the density or the smoke with my my initial settings. Just adding more smoke will help kind of give you some more dynamic contrast and stuff. I'm usually more partial to some more red, deeper red kind of glows. It looks like in their videos they were getting it. I don't know if that was just in a post-process color correction stuff. It's always really a tricky balance with the pyro stuff of like not too yellow, greenish, like banana color, and then I don't know. The more red you have, the more of like an anime or like cartoonish kind of look, but I prefer like a more stylized kind of explosion color correction. So you can see, because I reduced that or increased the cooling rate already, if we turn off scatter, most of the fire has like faded out by this point, whereas originally it was just staying around too long. I think the scattering does a good job as well of keeping, where did it go? Keeping this from happening. This was always a big problem with the solvers, or the end result was that you would get these really big licks of heat that would stand out and kind of break the scale of a simulation or of a render. But with the scatter, kind of like echoing everything throughout the volume, it does a better job of just softening that kind of look and making it look kind of still more realistic. Just see the difference there is, looks a lot more like gasoline or an explosion or something like that. All right, so I'll do, just go back to maybe 0.15 for right now. And if you guys want to get back up to date, here's another latest version. We'll do another flipbook. The other thing I've been doing is darkening the smoke, making it closer to black. I think that's, I don't know, for whatever reason theirs is, it's like 0.1 in terms of like the color value between 0 and 1. It's just, is it another thing that, I don't know. You get a more stylized look when it's like almost a black, very close to black smoke. Yeah, I think this look right here is really what I'm into. It's like that you still have little bits of black to sell the detail and the contrast, but overall it has that blurry kind of glowy look to it or whatever. So yeah, the other thing that I didn't talk about that much, but it gets set up internally with the minimal OpenCL solver, the Nano VDB. So they mention it somewhere in here. Did I get lost? Okay, I see it. Right here they have NVIDIA Nano VDB support for minimal solver. So the Nano VDB is basically more quickly moving VDB source volumes onto your GPU when you're doing the simulation. So before the Nano VDB support was rolled in, it would be slower to source. That's why I was always doing particle sources for my simulations. The Nano VDB should have a bit of a speed increase for if you have like an animated character, just animated, anything saved as VDB, it will be quicker to source it into your simulation. So yeah, I think it's a little better now. What I might do, start moving maybe to even a higher resolution, see what we can do to push it. And then also boosting the core kind of fire emissive bit, just to try to get some higher, some stuff blowing out or overexposed, like very white at the start of it. Maybe add one of the default characters in for like a bit of reference with the scale and stuff like that. This one was super impressive. I really like the camera. It just keeps zooming out over time. They add color fields for Sparse Pyro. That was always a big thing that was missing. You could always do color with the traditional like dot network, but then if you're moving to the Sparse Pyro or the level pyro. It just wasn't supported before. Whoa. This is really robust documentation here. Whoever does their icons at Side Effects is really, really talented designer. All right. So I'm gonna go into this pyro look. Maybe do something close to double for the intensity of the fire. Might go up in voxel size to just run through some quick tests just to see where the values are at. I don't know if this could get even higher. Just trying to really sell like the initial burst or explosion, like kick the intensity up quite a bit. Yeah, I think this should be good for right now. I think this was a new thing they added as well, was the default for disturbance to be speed-based. I think this calculate speed field option is new with 18.5 as well. Like, it wasn't always there. This is basically just taking the length of the velocity and creating a speed field that you can use to drive your shaping effects. I'm pretty sure that wasn't always in Houdini 18. I might do even more dissipation. Bit more disturbance. Go a little bit lower with the block size. Then I'll just go to pretty small with the default, the starting voxel. See how good we can get it to look. So yeah, by in the shell, I make these aliases. I'll just be able to switch between Houdini 18 and 18.5. If you guys are switching between, like if you're using Redshift, they don't have a plugin for 18.5 yet. So this is a good way to work if you're on Windows or Mac. You can usually just maybe double click like the installers. But if you're using the shell, creating aliases, it's a good way to do that. So in my home directory, just like the bash RC, like your profile, I just have all of the old Houdini versions or whatever in that script. So I'm gonna go back into Houdini 18 for a second and see if that speed field option still exists. See if it's a new feature or not. Just leave this on top for right now. Just go into geometry. Is it Pyro? Yeah, I don't see it here anymore. So I think that speed field was they snuck it in. Right. It's pretty cool. So yeah, this is what I meant with that hotter core. Especially if you're compositing it in, extracting or getting like a bloom, like a wide glow over your entire camera frame. It's a bit nicer to kind of sell it where you have some stuff that is overexposed. So this is what I meant with it's flat. You just don't have as much like dynamic range. Adding like post effects, a lens flare, or glow is more. It's easier to do when you have some more. Is it like a HDR file compared with just like a flat JPEG file? It's just tends to be more realistic this way. All right, so I'm gonna let this run a little bit longer. I think this one's looking more promising. I'll get some water. Looking good. Thank you, Hobbit. Thank you, Dimitri. Yeah, it's like getting pretty toasty. Looks like a crispy marshmallow. Hydro homies. Hydration Nation. Yeah, I think this crackling, it's pretty tricky to get this nice like balance of stuff. Joao, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. For popping in for the Houdini 18 celebration. Super impressive stuff with Kinefx and Pyro. Yeah, I think, and then the flip fluids. I was talking about Igor's breakdown or compilation of tests. If you take a look at this website, he compiled like a bunch of flip books of all of his tests. Igor Zech, yeah, he's probably the most talented flip artist, especially for like large scale foam and all that stuff. He's been testing out, I think, since Houdini 12. Like he was even doing some Naiad tests. I think he's worked as like a simulation artist for Bifrost, for Maya, for some of their releases. But he definitely knows flip solvers inside and out. A monster. So yeah, this is like 6 minutes in now for 48, roughly 48 frames. So it's definitely still not up to the Embergen speeds, but it's definitely getting closer. Yeah, take it easy, Joao. Thanks for popping in. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play with the KinFX stuff too much, but from what I've seen, I think like CG Wiki, Matt Estello, Tokyo Megaplex on Twitter, they've been playing around with it and getting some cool results. Yeah, some of this stuff is starting to look really good as it transitions from like super bright crunchiness into smoke. It's really cool. This was some of Matt's experiments with it. So I think automatically the KinFX is used or will keep track of like your base. This is kind of like making a spline rig out of any geometry you pass. So like a default line, when you wiggle it, the rest of the kind of children or branches of it will get that like transformation passed along to it. That will automatically kind of get taken care of for you. So before you would have to do a lot of work with wrangles, like multiplying and concatenating that transform matrix. But it looks like you can just do it a lot more easily now with this stuff. And then in their demo keynote, like if you had an octopus or any other creature, you can just substitute it in your chain, which is the big advantage between now being able to do rigs at the SOP level. So you don't have to, before you'd have to run a bunch of shelf tools to like run scripts to re-rig or to transfer over a bunch of object nodes. Like the shelf tools are never, or the object level tools are never really designed to like take another input and substitute sources out that well, unless they're designed kind of in a special way. But this stuff here seems really nice. So yeah, all this stuff here I think is from the scattering volume, and like you could see when I was earlier, I was turning on and off the main volume. Like if you just have this standing out by itself without the secondary scatter volume, it really quickly breaks the scale of your pyro simulation, or just looks really CG. So I think this scatter volume stuff is definitely something that's super exciting with 18.5. So like this bridge or this transition from very intense to darkness, just having that as smooth and soft as possible is subtle, but it definitely adds a lot to your final result. Could be cool to do like volcanoes. something with this. Thinking even maybe for like nebulas or lightning, like if you could imagine electricity inside of this, trying out some of the bake volume or the scattering, blurring technique should be pretty cool. It's like one of the most difficult things with volumetrics in Houdini was to do like thunderstorms or that type of stuff. The main reason was because like having the secondary glow and all that stuff was always either really slow to render if you were trying to do it like physically based, doing multiple volume bounces in your render. But the way they set it up here, the viewport preview stuff is really nice. So yeah, it looks like this is 13 minutes for a 3-second simulation. I have the resolution and stuff like that cranked pretty high, but it's pretty impressive to get this level of detail in that much time. I think before it would maybe take you an hour or two, especially when you factor in the scattering phase. It's like super cool that they've dialed that in to be so like responsive, just generate the blurred volume so quickly. Used to other people's, even the Axiom solver's implementation of it, I think is a little bit slower than this. Is the scatter volume also used for render time shading? Yes. Yeah, if you pull it apart, you'll see what's going on. It should be possible to even use it with Redshift. You need to do a little bit of like extra steps or extra tweaking. But if you look, I'll stop the simulation in a minute here. If you look in the OTL or in the node, the digital asset for it, you'll see that they have a shader that's configured for it. So looks like this is a good place to stop this. Just move this down here for reference right now. Seagull Rush. So you look right here, you middle mouse button on it, and you can see that they are assigning a material using this shop material path primitive attribute. If I double click, you see that it automatically brings me right into the shader. And then this is linked, or it's basically replicating or applying the same settings as that scattering volume. Maybe looks like this is set up with Vex or whatever by default. I'm not gonna go super into it, but it's designed to basically give you the same result as the viewport. So this right here, material assignment, is set up automatically. It does look like they have some other little macros or things you could apply with it. They already, maybe even camera, light rig. And then they have some different presets or whatever to initialize it with. But yeah, this should be giving you all the results and everything at once. The results and the shader like ready to go for everything. I don't know what this bake looks like. If you want to here, you can basically bake these ramps into this CE volume. So for Redshift, this would be useful, is you could just feed Redshift the CE volume, and then you don't have to recreate or reproduce these ramps. You would just basically, with the Redshift shader, if I look at a material network, just do I'm in 18.5 right now, so I don't have the Redshift plugin. With Redshift, you would just feed it that CE volume in the emissive component, and you should be all set with that. So this is just 18.0. If we do RS material, where did it go? The volume, emission right here, if you just did CE, then you should get those, then you would pick up the baked emission, which is pretty cool that they've simplified it down to that step. So I'll save another file here, and then do another publish or distribution of it. Probably gonna end things here for today. I think it's a somewhat good stopping point. Got some pretty cool results just tweaking things out of the box. This Pyro Bake, super cool node to play around with. And then especially just all of their simple aerial explosion, ground explosion, GPU explosion. All those things, super fun, super interested to play around with some of the other shelf tools. And also these new nodes, the Pyro Trail. It's just really robust release for a 0.5 increment. So yeah, I'll probably off stream or afterwards, I'm gonna make a flipbook of this. Some higher settings, or just to be able to share it or play it back. So probably later today I'll be posting it. But yeah, I hope everyone else is having fun playing around and all that. Catch you on the flipbook side. Seen a video about Houdini explosions rendered in sequential planes to then port that as textures into Unity, represent a fire top-down lit tunnel. Yeah, the sequential planes is kind of like, for game engines, is their way to hack it. So instead of like a volume, you could imagine that as being a stack of 3D images. But that's a hack to get 3D volumes into game engines, is to basically render it in 10 slices. So instead of your voxel resolution being like 500 by 500, 526, you just do 10 like height slices, and then you have 10 images that are 500 by 500. Super technical. I'm not going to get, I think they've gotten closer into bringing that type of stuff into games, but yeah, it's just kind of optimizing data. Still too much information to bring 3D volumes. Animating like in real time onto a game engine is too much data for real time, unfortunately. Still. All right, everyone, enjoy the new release. Come up with some cool things. Have fun blowing stuff up. Take it easy. We'll be back Friday.